Good evening and welcome to the Town of Rockland Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. Please stand and join us and salute to the flag. Chief Henderson, please start us off.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, first on the agenda, community announcements. Recognition of Julie E. Schaefer, Finance Committee member for 21 years. Town Moderator, Chief Henderson, if you want to come forward.
How you do? Is this the best place to stand with this camera?
Right in front of me, absolutely.
First of all, the Finance Committee Chairman, John Pumphrey, who's here, said that we should, after 21 years of long, meritorious service on the Finance Committee, Julia Schaefer is retiring from it, and a well-deserved recognition tonight. When people think about being on a committee, this is a difficult committee because most of the meetings are in the wintertime. Most of them are cold, icy, and it's an adventure for no matter who it is. And it shows real dedication for Julie and all the members of that committee and all people that serve the town to volunteer, but Julie especially did it for a long, long time. So Julie, I'd like you to come up. We have a few citations. Before I do, I want to recognize that Julia's son Lou and his wife Nikki, his daughter, her daughter, Lisa, I'm going to call you, I better get my cheat sheet out, and her grandchildren, Jen, Kristen, and Greg, her sister Patty, her brother-in-law, Paul Fivian, who happens to live across the street from me, and I don't know if I missed anyone, but I also have members of the finance. Committee here. Bobby McDonald is here. Bill Principe is here. Linda Sternfeld is here. Did I miss anybody? Bill Stewart is here. And well, John is here. John's going to get to say a few words. So without further ado, come on up. I wanted to present this to you. This is from the great town moderator. On behalf of the town of Rockland, I would like to thank you for your many years of dedicated service as a member of the Rockland Finance Committee. Between 1988 and 2023, you volunteered your time for 21 of those years. On many winter nights, you braved the cold temperatures and some icy conditions. You attended countless meetings in order to decide how to best allocate funds to the various departments while also thinking of the taxpayers. It has been my privilege to know you and to reappoint you to 3 additional 3-year terms as a member of the Finance Committee. Your willingness to serve the town in this capacity for many years is something that is greatly appreciated and will always be remembered. Thank you. Thank you. John Pumphrey, you were the one that came up with this idea, so if you'd like to say a few words, then by all means come up. John is our Finance Committee Chairman. He has been the last 3-4 years.
Lost
No.
More than that.
7 years since I left.
Something along those
Okay.
lines.
Time flies.
Anyway, all I know is that since I've been on the committee, and Julie, you've been there, you've asked great questions, you've been very insightful. You've always been one to, if I forgot a pen or a piece of paper, I lost my place, especially in the beginning, you would help out quite a bit. But you're great as a secretary for us for many years, doing all of the notes, making sure they get up to the town hall, making sure the townspeople have access to them. You did the job impeccably well, and it was a pleasure to serve with you. We really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Now, The other thing that Julie was involved in was also, she was on the recent Phelps Elementary School Building Committee, and prior to that, you were also on the high school and middle school building committee, were you?
No,
No, okay.
capital planning.
Capital planning,
planning.
you were on the capital planning committee.
Yeah.
And so Rich Penny came tonight, and I'd like to mention, Rich, and Mike also served with you, and John, did you serve with Julie also? John Ellett, our other selectman also. So, we invited Rich to come up and speak about, you being on the committee and helping with the school building committee. Rich?
So Julia, I want to say thank you very much. So I've had the pleasure of about 10 years on the finance committee with Julie, but over the past 5 years, I guess it is, 18, 17, that we started the Phelps Elementary School project. Been able to work with Julie, been very instrumental. And I think people underestimate what volunteers do to this town, or the importance of it. You know, she's dedicated at this point over 2 decades of her life of improving this town. This town wouldn't be in the position that it is if it wasn't for Julie and others like her. So I just want to say thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, because going back to the finance committee, it's been about 15 years that we've worked together, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
It's been an honor to.
And now we have State Representative Dave DeCoste here to present 2 citations to Julie.
Okay, well, first of all, Julie, thank you. Having been a selectman, I know how hard one term in the finance committee is work. You have to deal with a state that isn't always forthcoming about what the money's going to be, and subsequent reimbursements, and then you made me smile, Mr. Former Selectman, when you talked about the Phelps, because Rockland has the, and it's well known among the school building authority, it's very easy to sell a Rockland project, because it's not just on budget, on time, it's under budget early. And that is the standard for Rockland, and that really helps when it comes up and it's recognized. Because other towns are not like that in many cases. Rockland is. So
We won't
20.
be building any more schools.
Well, I just follow orders
Never say
here.
no,
I
right?
just follow orders from these 5. But very well done. 21 years. Thank you very much. And I have 2 citations. One from the House. Reads, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts House of Representatives, be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Julia E. Schaefer in recognition of your well-earned retirement from the Rockland Finance Committee after 21 years of service! Exclamation point. Rockland appreciates all you have contributed. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses hope for future good fortune and continued success in all your endeavors. Dated today, and signed by Speaker Mariano and myself, so congratulations there.
Thank you very much.
And I have a second one from Senator Keenan. And Senator Keenan, as a matter of fact, they're still working hard with the budget and a number of issues that we're working on still. Matter of fact, I talked to the Senator yesterday, believe it or not, Juneteenth, on a number of things we're working for Rockland money-wise, so your issue by the highway there. We have, all is not lost, and we're working hard, but the Senate citations are a little bit different because your name is actually entered into the records. So as long as there's a Massachusetts, your name will be in the official records of the Massachusetts, Commonwealth of Massachusetts State Senate. Official citation. Be it hereby known that the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to Julia E. Schaefer in recognition of your retirement from the Rockland Finance Committee after 21 years of service. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its very best wishes and for continued success, that this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested in a copy thereof transmitted to the Clerk of the Senate, signed by President Spilka, Clerk Michael D. Hurley, and our Senator John F. Keenan. So, congratulations.
So you're not getting out of luck here too quickly. There's still one more presentation. So obviously, I've known you for probably what, 15 years anyway. You know, I started on the finance committee, and one of the first things I noticed was that although you weren't the loudest in the room, Rich was on the committee, you weren't the loudest in the room, so was Bob. You were definitely, most obviously, the most respected, and because your opinions always came through very thorough research and thought. And it provokes thought from the rest of us at times, you know, where you go in thinking one thing, and you come out like, oh, wow, Julie just totally changed my mind. So, and if you ask my wife, that's something that's very difficult to do, so kudos to you. So without any further ado, obviously as a town, we're gonna miss you. You've done, you know, steadfast work for us, and you've done it with the utmost class. So without further ado, from the town of Rockland presents this certificate of recognition to Julia E. Schaefer in recognition of 21 years of service on the Rockland Finance Committee. Our community extends to you its heartfelt thanks and appreciation for your tremendous dedication on behalf of the town of Rockland, Massachusetts, this June 20th, 2023. I always like to include a quote, and most times Sue I pretty much knows that anything Winston Churchill really does it. But in this case, it is wonderful what great strides can be made when there is a resolute purpose behind them. And that spoke to your focus and your determination with the singular outcome of what is best for the town of Rockland. So for that, Julie, the town, I think, will always be grateful for your service. So, congratulations. Before we hear from you, Julie, I know obviously John was your chairman on the finance committee, and I know Lori served with you on the finance committee. So,
Yes, and
Lori, why don't you
yeah.
you go first, and then we'll go to John and Tiffany.
Oh, yeah, Julie, you're just a doll. You're so kind, and I liked having girl power on the finance committee. That was great. You too, Linda. Hey. But what I was really impressed with, what I learned a lot from you about, is how to question things, and then how to question them even deeper. So I thank you for that, and I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors, which I hope involves a lot of downtime and vacations.
Always. Thank you very much, Laurie. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you
Only
too.
through the TV screen.
Okay, Julie, I'm not sure I can add much more than what everyone else said. It was a pleasure when we served together. I know when I came on, I definitely learned from you and enjoyed all the input that you ever gave, and the town will miss your efforts, and we definitely appreciated them. So,
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
good seeing you.
And I would like to say, first
Sorry,
of all,
my back was too.
Oh,
sorry.
really?
Now it's to the audience.
I wanted to say thank you, and your commitment and dedication to this town is truly inspirational, and an inspiration to all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have anything to say now?
Yeah.
Very few words, but it's been an honor and really a privilege to work with so many people that are here tonight, but also the other committee members all the way through. I remember when I first started out, I was a liaison to the school committee, which was way back. And then I was capital planning, school buildings, all of those committees, all of those people who are so respected by me. They're all hard workers and think of nothing but what's best for the town. The current finance committee, I think, is one of the best I've been on in all the years I've been there. John Puffrey is excellent as chairman. And I'm looking at Bill Principe. He's been on a long time, so Bill. And Bob McDonald, who always said that he was here before me. But it's good to see you, Bob. And Linda, who is now our a secretary now. No, not the secretary, but
Just a regular member.
just a regular member.
Chairman in training.
Trained chairman. But certainly a very intelligent lady. You can't go wrong with looking at her input, looking for her inputs, because she's always right on the ball. So it's been an honor and it's been a privilege, and I'm much appreciative of tonight and these great testimonies.
Good job, Julie.
Stop by the committee. Thank you. Thanks, Julie.
Do I have everything?
Yeah. No, Mike, you got it. Oh, Dave's has got one. Dave, Representative Dakota has got one.
Oh, okay. All right, then I'll go and get
Okay,
Thank you so much.
they're just clearing out.
that. And then what's the later?
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. Next on the agenda, walking tour and music event. Doug?
Thanks, Mike. I did want to mention one other community announcement. There is a series of walking tours and events between June 21st and 24th. For the public's information, there's a lot of info at the website masswalkingtour.org. Some of the events include on June 21st, a group hike in Holbrook Town Forest at 2 o'clock, followed by a concert. On June 22nd, a group hike at the Ames Norwell State Park at 11 a.m., followed by a concert at Abington High School. On the 23rd, it's at Whitman Town Park at 11 a.m., followed by a concert at Whitman Town Hall. And then on June 24th, a group hike starting at the Hanover Branch Rail Trail at 11 a.m., followed by a concert here in Rockland at the Channing Unitarian Universalist Church on Webster Street. So again, there are hikes and concerts and a lot of information at masswalkingtour.org. That's all I have for announcements.
All right, thank you, Doug. All right, next on the agenda, minutes for June 6, 2023. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve minutes from June 6th.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. Next on the agenda, under new business, appointments, zoning board of appeals, Stephen Galley. Stephen, come on up.
And while- Yeah, right there, please. And while Mr. Galley's coming up, I just want to highlight that the zoning board terms are for 5 years.
Yep. So Stephen, we appointed you as an alternate member a few years back.
Yes.
I remember doing it on a Zoom call. And since that time, you've done enough in the eyes, at least, of your chairman, Rob Rosa, that he's actually recommended that we move you to a permanent position. Your background, if you want to just give us a little bit of your background again, just for those newer members of the board. And then, I mean, I've been following, how you've done, and you always seem to have informed opinions, and you definitely, I would say, do your homework. So,
Thank you.
So without any further ado.
Okay, so background, like just for personal, professional background?
Yeah.
Okay, well, just first, basically, I've been a Rockland resident for 19 years, moved in 2004. Right now I work for a company that's located in Rockland. It's Energy Machinery. I'm a parts manager. Been there since 1997. That's a local industrial equipment service and sales company. and I mean, just a little bit vanilla, but I mean, obviously, you know, I've been on the zoning board for just about 2.5 years as an alternate. I don't know how really more to really flesh it out other than to be boring and tell you about like what I do at my job, but it's those are the bare bones of it. I don't know if you had any questions to flesh that out.
Well, you know, I mean, you've been on the committee as an alternate, and
Yeah.
I think, you know, members of this board have obviously been paying attention, so if they have any questions or concerns, I'll open it up to the members of the board. Anyone, questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Lori
Oh.
has a comment.
Oh, all right, okay.
Yeah. Hey, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for, you know, having interest in it and volunteering. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
So what interests you about zoning particularly?
Well, when I first started, it was just I saw a Facebook notice, someone saying, hey, if you want to contribute to the town, you can volunteer for a committee. And it sounded interesting. I mean, just the concept of it, you know, to go see what's going on in the town. And I kind of like I said, I understood it was basically to see what you can do when you're not quite following the rules because something doesn't quite fit. And it's not because people are breaking the rules in spirit. It's just that what they're trying to do more stuff and is it doesn't fit with what the rules are because, like, you know, a favorite word I keep hearing is pre-existing non-conforming. So I keep hearing that over and over again. And that keeps coming up over and over again. So that was, you know, why I volunteered to get into the zoning board. And the one thing I want to say is, like, I figure I might be doing it wrong because I actually like it. I like being on the zoning board. I like the chairman. I like the members. I really like the chairman's leadership, and I do like the other members, their insight and their questions. And I've often found I don't go first when asking questions. I mean, the chairman's smart. He goes with the most experienced people as the book ends, the beginning and the end. So I get to ask usually in the middle, even as an alternate, and even when I was non-voting. So I always appreciated that. So I still got to be part of the process and practice just asking questions that I would not be voting on, but still have an opinion and express my thoughts or concerns or ask questions about the project or the rules that guide it, you know. The one thing I have learned is that I'm learning a little bit because when I have a question, someone asks it before I get my turn, so I like that. So, okay, good, I'm starting to understand the process. So when the chairman asked me if I would consider applying for the full member, I felt more confident about that. So I don't know if I could say more than that at the moment. I think I said it. Hope that.
Thanks. Yeah, and I have another question. How do you feel about eventually working hand in hand with a planner, like a town planner?
Well, I don't know what that would be like. Honestly, I would rely on the chairman to hold my hand on getting to, you know, to get used to that process. Because I've been more of an observant participant because, as I said, I don't vote in the majority of the projects. I voted, you know, out of 2.5 years, I think I voted like 5 times or so. I can't remember exactly, but it doesn't feel like a high percentage. That may even be high. But I feel like I could learn that. I could learn the process. Because I've seen the members communicate with other, you know, like the police chief, the fire chief, you know, or just talking about letters from other committees about projects, so I can see the interaction. But I've never directly had to interact with another department. But I feel like I got leadership on the board that could walk me through that process and adapt to it.
Cool.
Okay. So if nobody has any other further questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve Stephen Galley as a permanent member of the zoning board.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thanks, Stephen.
All right, thank you. I was told when I was done I should run up, swear in, so I could join the 7:30 zoning board meeting. So
Yeah, hustle.
thank you very much. Have a night. Good night.
See anybody? Yeah.
There should be, yep.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is 7:15 poll hearing with National Grid. I'll entertain a motion to enter into the 7:15 poll hearing with National Grid.
Motion to enter into the 7:15 poll hearing.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, roll call vote. Select Person Needham.
Yes.
Select Person Elwood,
Yes.
Select Person Childs,
Yep.
and myself, okay? Is there somebody here from National Grid? Come on up.
Good evening.
How you been? If you want to just tell us, who you are, obviously, and what you guys are looking to do.
Yep. My name is Socrates Perez. My address is 100 East Ashland Street in Brockton. The plan for this is to petition for an additional pole, inline pole, at near 805 Hingham Street in Rockland. It's just an additional pole. It's going to be labeled 66. It's for a new capacitor bank. It's just to make it more reliable, the lines.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Mike, and I can just add that I did check with the highway superintendent, and he's 100% fine with the request. Makes sense.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn the 7:15 public hearing.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, roll call vote. Select Person Needham,
Yes.
Select Person Elwood,
Yes.
Select Person Childs.
Yep.
Okay. So the public hearing is adjourned. I will entertain a motion to approve pole number 66 to be located on Hingham Street, being at the point approximately 300 feet northeast of the center line of the intersection of Forest Street.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's unanimous. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
Socrates.
Bye-bye.
Okay, next on the agenda, common vic license for Spicy Edamame, 434 Union Street. Welcome.
Hello.
You want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Wei Jia. I'm an attorney on behalf of my clients, Mr. Wang and his wife, and they are taking over the current business operating as Spicy Edamame at 434 Union Street, which I believe is a takeout restaurant.
Mhm.
And the new guy, my client, going to go in there and run the business as without any change, same menu, same operating hours, and without any renovation. And actually, Mr. Wang has been there for the last couple of 2 weeks and getting familiar with the operation of the restaurant. And so that's basically, they're going to keep the same menu, actually. So it's very straightforward transfer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, all the paperwork appears to have been in order, so with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Welcome, guys. Good luck.
Welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, discussion of potential special town meeting, November 6th, 2023. Doug?
Thanks, Mike. So this is really just a preliminary discussion. I just wanted the board to be aware of some things cooking in the background, and you don't need to take any votes tonight, but certainly this is a discussion. If you have any feedback, this would be a good time. So in my time here, we haven't really had too many special town meetings. In some communities, they do them regularly every fall. This particular fall, it looks like we will most likely need to have a special town meeting, and while there's a number of potential articles which I included in your packet, and I always keep a running list of just things that come up that look like they might need a town meeting vote, the main driver behind this is a potential zoning change for Union Point. In order for the new master developers at Union Point to be able to do their development, they need some zoning changes. And there's a process in the law that governs that. They're starting with the town of Weymouth. Hopefully, that all gets 100% finalized and approved by the end of June. Assuming that happens, they really need, in order to meet their timelines to get their development, voter approval in Abington and Rockland sooner than our normal annual town meeting. So that's why they would be requesting a town meeting in the fall. Abington already has a town meeting scheduled, I think, in October. So in talking to the moderator and just trying to look at schedules, Thanksgiving, Christmas, that kind of thing, we thought that first Monday in November might make sense. I don't want to get too far into the Union Point discussion now, because in talking with the chairman earlier. And with the developers, we do intend on having the developers come into your next selectmen's meeting on July 11th, where the master developer and representatives from the redevelopment authority will come in and give a very detailed presentation on where they're at, what the zoning, potential zoning change looks like, what their timelines, all that stuff. So there'll be a ton of detail at your next meeting. And also, I certainly don't want you to vote anything tonight, because if for some unforeseen reason things fall through getting the zoning approved in Weymouth, they need to start over again and start that process. So it's kind of just a heads up. And maybe before I go into the other potential articles, does November 6th seem like a reasonable date for you guys? Again, not wanting to get too close to Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Any concerns?
There's no elections this November.
No elections,
No.
correct.
Yeah, no.
So again, that's just a placeholder. We can talk more about that at your July meeting. So some of the other articles that I've been putting on this draft list, in addition to the Union Point zoning, would be MBTA community zoning, if it's ready by then. That could wait until the annual in May. So that doesn't have to be on this, but it's one of those things, you know, we got to get it done, so there's no harm in getting it done sooner. And again, for those that don't remember, the MBTA community zoning is how we euphemistically refer to Section 18 of Chapter 358 of the Laws of 2020, which added a new section in the law which requires, and I could read all the language, but I won't, but it basically requires a certain area of land to be zoned for very dense multifamily housing. Not affordable housing, but dense multifamily housing. And the communities that this affects are MBTA communities, communities that have MBTA stations, or MBTA adjacent communities. And we're considered an adjacent community because we're next to communities like Hingham and Abington and Weymouth that have commuter rail stops. So we are required to have zoning in place that meets and is in compliance, and if we don't, not only will we lose the ability to get any state grants, MassWorks grants or anything else, but the new Attorney General has even threatened legal action for communities that don't comply. So we need to comply. Our Assistant Town Administrator has been doing great work, and she's got the town a grant with a consultant, and she has a very good plan that can kind of piggyback off our 40R district just a little bit and get us in compliance. Some of the other potential articles are the Holy Family Senior Affordable Housing Project. If you remember the old Holy Family School where the developers came in, the developers have, since the time that they came in to meet with us and get our support, they've then realized that there needs to be a town match, financial match, in order for them to be eligible for all the state assistance that's really going to make this project possible. So they've already met with the Community Preservation Committee, and they've put an application in for a $100,000 match through the CPA toward that project. And because of their project timelines, that would be an important article to vote. I'm going to talk later in my town administrator report about the fire station project status. It's possible that the chief and we could seek some limited funding for a feasibility study on the current station. I'll talk more about a bit about that later. Chief is also looking for a small appropriation as a match for a grant that he's received for training. So it'd be a grant match. I've also met with the police chief and the deputy police chief about the roof and HVAC project that we just passed at town meeting. And just the way the economy is, even though we had the most recent quotes we could have got, there's already significant cost escalators for the HVAC unit. So we may need to supplement that appropriation a little bit at town meeting. There's also a potential to appropriate funds to cover overtime for both the police and fire departments for a very large active shooter training program that they'd like to participate in. So they got a grant to be able to get the training, but there's a lot of overtime that would result. So there's a cost related to that. And then lastly, a very small correction to one salary in the FY24 budget. There was a typo for the library director's salary, only about $600, so it's a small amount. That's what I have so far as just a draft list of potential articles if you decide to call that special town meeting. That's all I have on that, unless you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? All right, thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, discussion and vote, are the acceptance of Chapter 269 of the Act of 2022, an act relative to cost of living adjustments for retirees. Doug?
Thanks, Mike. So I put in your packet a lot of material that I received from the Plymouth County Retirement Association not too long ago, and this is regarding a new law that was passed by the state legislature. It's a local option, Chapter 269 of the Acts of 2022, which would allow a one-time increase to the cost of living adjustment for retirees in the current fiscal year only, in FY23. It would increase their cost of living adjustment from 3% to 5%. So there's a letter, there's the act, a memo, and then most importantly at the end, there's a spreadsheet with a fiscal impact. So I'm going to explain it as best I can. There's been a lot of discussion amongst town managers because while in other parts of the state they may have been kind of aware of this sooner and discussed it sooner, but we really didn't become aware of this until just recently after your last meeting was already posted. The Plymouth County Retirement Association has already voted to accept this, and the process in the law is that the Retirement Board has to approve it, and at least 2/3 of the entities have to approve it. And I use the word entity intentionally because it's not just towns. There's 27 towns in the county, but there are a lot of other units that are part of the Plymouth County retirement system. Things like regional schools, a lot of housing authorities, things like that. So there's a lot of issues related to this, but I'll just cut to the chase because as a town administrator, I always go right to the bottom line. What's the fiscal impact? And it's more significant than I thought. So if you look at the spreadsheet at the end, the bottom line is, if you look at all 59 retirement units, the cost for this extra 2% for the one-time increase for only current retirees in FY23 totals $12.2 million. The cost for Rockland is just about $650,000. The way that the county is looking at implementing this would be to stagger the individual units' kind of payment in to cover that expense and spread it out over a 5-year period. So the cost to Rockland in that far corner on the right is nearly $137,000. So that means $137,000 per year for 5 years to cover this expense. That 137 times 5 doesn't exactly equal that 650,000 because there's interest and a return on investment associated with the investments with the retirement board. So we won't get into that further. Part of the way this has been communicated to us, and especially from the Plymouth County Treasurer, is that the average pension for the average retiree is pretty modest. It's only around $27,000, I think. So this was intended to really help those types of lower income people on fixed incomes, don't have a lot of disposable income, kind of help them during this high inflationary time. So I certainly appreciate that, and that I don't want to take away from that at all. What's difficult from my perspective, of course, is we just finished negotiating union contracts, and we did not settle for 5%. We didn't even settle for 3%. We generally settled for 2 to 2.5%. And we also have people that are making in the lower income end of the range, depending on their positions. So that that could create an inequity that could be difficult. Again, the county's characterized this as a one-time increase. It is certainly one time in that it's only that extra 2% is only for income in their FY23 fiscal year. But in my opinion, there's really a bit more of an impact because their base goes up, and then any future increases after that would be greater than they would otherwise. The only other point I would make, and I have also discussed this with the school department, the school superintendent and assistant superintendent, and I think we think similarly about it. The big thing that's really jumping out at us, even more so than this $137,000, is as the County Retirement Association has been trying to fully fund the pension system, we're looking at big increases in our retirement assessment. So currently for FY24, we just budgeted a little over $5 million based on our retirement assessment. And if you look at on this right-hand side of the sheet, the FYE 25 appropriation for Rockland is over $6 million. So it's, over 23% greater than we're at now, $1 million increase. And that's before we even talk about this extra 2% for retirees. So one way to look at it, and I'm just giving you kind of all the pieces and you guys can make your own decision. One way to look at it, and my initial reaction was, geez, this is really tough. $137,000 per year for 5 years, $650,000. It's unfunded. There's no dollars associated with this coming in that's going to help us pay for this. We're going to have to somehow eat this in our budget and cut from other areas to cover that expense. That's difficult. Then on the other hand, if you compare it to these overall increases we're looking at of, over $1 million, it's relatively small compared to the other much more significant increase that we're getting because they're looking to, understandably, fully fund the system on an accelerated schedule. As I did ask the executive director of the retirement board, and I think he might be here. We haven't met personally, we've only spoken on the phone, so forgive me. He is here to answer any questions you might have. I asked him earlier, because everybody, they need to get their 2/3 approval by the end of this fiscal year, by June 30th. And he indicated to me that so far, out of the 59 units, 4 towns have voted to accept. And I don't know exactly when all the others are going to be voting, if they are, over the next 2 weeks. So I'm happy to tell you more. I know I threw a lot at you, but that's the topic on the table, and the Retirement Association's looking for a vote. And again, the executive director's here if you want to hear from him, Mike.
Yeah, I think that'd be appropriate. So Patrick Wyden, Esquire, if you'd like to just come up to the microphone, just kind of introduce yourself and maybe just explain a little bit of the process and some of the rationale with some of the votes that have occurred prior to them getting to this point before it comes before us. So without further ado.
Well, thank you very much for hearing from us. First of all, I do apologize for the tight time frame. And I spoke to Doug, and it's nice to meet him in person finally. I spoke to him several times, as well as by email. Basically, the board was set to vote on the increase when there was literally a medical emergency at the meeting, and the person had a life-threatening medical situation, and more or less flatlined. And John Ciara, a board member, former firefighter and a retiree, and another one of our board members who's a former firefighter and retiree, revived the person. So that was the end of the meeting at that point. Absolutely. But it's also the beginning of a new life for that person. That kind of turned it upside down a bit in terms of time frame. So he was the executive director, and I've already asked him if I could, let that out, and he said no problem. He was out of commission for a few months, then he had to leave the retirement board. So then ensued a search for a new executive director, which took a few months, and then I was brought on board May 1st. They did have the vote in April to approve this, and I just have to tweak a little bit of what Doug said. But first it goes to the board for a vote, the retirement board, then it has to go, because the legislature dictated where it should go, it goes to the Plymouth County Commissioners, who also voted. The board vote was unanimous, the Plymouth County Commissioners was unanimous, and then we were trying to get notice out to all the different boards. One other point of clarification, the 54 units or 55 units in our system do not vote on this. The vote is not that watered down. It's only cities and municipalities, cities and towns, excuse me, per the legislation that can vote on it. So your vote is very heavily weighted, and it's not diluted by being one of 54. It's one of 23. So we need 2/3 of that vote for the for the COLA base, the 2% one-time increase to go forward. Unfortunately, I suppose the legislature required us to go to the different municipalities and towns, but fortunately, you have a say-so in the matter in a vote. And I really do apologize for the tight time frame, and Doug, to you too. I mean, he's been very patient with me getting back to him as well. So, just in a nutshell, the 2% increase is only on the first 16,000, so it's $320 a year. It only applies to people who retired prior to July 1st of 21. There's no impact to FY24. The 5-year period, as Doug said, was brought to coincide with us being fully funded. And at that fully funded point, your payments will plummet to 70 to 80% less than they are now. So we're trying to get to that point as quickly as we can. Our investments do very well as compared to all the other retirement systems in Massachusetts. Doug noted 12.4 million is the cost of the whole system. So far, we are 5 for 5, unanimous. Lakeville, Pembroke, Situate, Wareham, and we just found out that Kingston voted unanimously to adopt the 2% COLA increase. I won't go over the math unless you want me to, but it is, it's not an insubstantial amount of money. It does, as I said, end up being $320 a year, $26 a month for the retirees, which, is, it's about 27,000, average. So there's just as many under it as there is over it. One note that was indicated in the cover sheet too that I think is pretty important is that even Social Security, the federal retirement system gave COLAs of 5.9% in 2022 and 8.7% in 2023, which is kind of unheard of. And I think they realize what inflation is doing to our retirees. In a substantial amount, if not overwhelming amount of our retirees don't get Social Security because as a public employee, you don't pay into it. So you don't get the Social Security benefits that benefited from that COLA increase. But a number of retirees are elderly and can't pick up any extra work. And if you want to hear from the 2 retirees, you could, if you have any questions for me or for them. But I do apologize again for the late notice, Doug, and members of the board, and I do request that you adopt and approve this increase. And I'd be willing any questions you have.
Okay, so I'll open it up to the board. Anybody have any questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, Laura.
In the paperwork, it says this act shall take effect on July 1st, 2022. So would it be retroactive to that plus the additional 4 years?
I think it's retroactive to July 23, this July. Maybe July, it might be, it's a good question.
Yeah,
maybe
it says 22 in all the paperwork.
Yeah, so it probably is. Although you'll pay it out in FY25.
Just a little clarification on that. My name is Charles Amanetti. I'm a retiree out of Middleborough. I work for the Plymouth County office. The retiree will see the benefit for the year starting July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. The town will not have it incur until the FYE 25 budget, which you'll start working on next November. And then it'll be for 5 years for the payment of it. But the retiree gets the one-time back pay for this year only. $320, in other words.
Anybody else?
One other point real quick on that. The legislature already passed this, obviously, and already granted it. They don't have to do retroactive for your teachers and also for all the other state workers. The only ones this concerns is the police, fire, and local workers.
Anybody else?
Did you have something else?
Yeah,
You wanna
and-
add to that? I'm sorry.
One thing that I'd like to follow up with is how we got here. The legislature and the governor at the time looked at Social Security. If your neighbors on Social Security, they get their pay raise on their full Social Security. And as Porrick said, between 2020 and 2021, going into 22, the pay raises that got up and beyond come out to 14.6% on their full pay. We get it on $16,000. $16,000, again, it's $360. And that's $320, and that's the, and it's one-time shot. This doesn't, per se, keep going, it doesn't keep multiplying and going on. Social Security, you get it, it's used as a factor going down the line. This is a one-time shot. All we're asking for is some fairness.
John?
I was just wondering if you could go over the math again. It kind of lost me on the 16,000 and 320. Could you just hit me with that a little slower?
Sure. The vote was based on the $16,000 base, COLA base, which is statutory. And so the vote for the 2% is only on the $16,000 base. And so anybody who has over a $16,000 pension will get that 2%, and anybody under it is prorated.
So that's 16,000 per month or per year?
It's just a base, it's your base, any individual pension. So it's only on the base of that pen, not per month, not per year. Per year, I'm sorry.
16,000, it only costs
Per year, the base. If you're under that, we prorate it.
Yep.
If you're over it, you get the 320.
Okay. Gotcha.
There's a fair amount under it too, to be honest with you.
So that 320 is per month or per year?
Per year.
Per year.
So, yeah.
Only for 1 year.
Yeah, for the 1 year. It's $26 a month for 1 year.
Doesn't keep going.
Okay. So for $26 a month per retiree, the town is gonna have to pay $137,000 for 5 years? Is
Yes.
that-
Yes.
Okay. Just trying to get my head around that sound.
It's hard. What happens is they took and I had the same, I'm an engineer, my undergrad. I looked at it like 15 times. I said, there's gotta be some fuzzy math in here, but basically they project the life expectancy of that finite group out, that's the math is attached to their life expectancy, but the payments are only in that 5-year period of time to coincide with being fully funded, the retirement board.
Okay.
And if you could just elaborate, and then you said once that's funded, then the payments will plummet.
Yeah.
Can you just explain that a little bit?
Well, basically, what we're doing, all the retirement systems in the state are paying for retirees from the past. They used to pay as you go, and then for some reason, I don't know when it changed, but we we weren't funding the retirement, so we were kind of writing a check, 104 retirement systems. And then now the checks are coming home to roost. Chickens are coming home to roost, so basically, we're paying off pensions from before. That's what our unfunded liability is. And we projected out with investments, contributions in, debts and movement to be fully funded, hopefully in 2029. Once that comes.
Yeah, so in the meantime, you've accelerated the payment plan.
Yes.
The payment amount, liability to the towns.
Yes.
In order to pay it off sooner rather than pay more interest down the road.
Exactly. Like a mortgage kind of.
Yep.
Once we're fully funded, that means we can fund all the past retirements. And then all we have to do is
stay ahead of the new ones.
Yeah, town of Rockland pays for the actuarial accrual of the present employees. So like our salaries and our contributions will pay for our own pensions. But we've had this nut since the 80s, because they paid the pension without having anything in reserve.
And if I can just add on that point, like what he said makes perfect sense to get fully funded. I mean, that makes right. But what's hard is, from my position, having to pay those increased assessments, because again, what we just voted at town meeting compared to their sheet for their estimate for FY25, before we even do this increase, is $1 million higher. And we're gonna have to come up with that somehow, because we don't have an extra $1 million of revenue coming in to pay that increased assessment. And it's very difficult to budget, but we have to do it. So I'm just highlighting that part.
And then my question to you as well, Doug, is you had mentioned your concern would be the precedent that this would establish because of the fact that the percentages are higher than
yeah,
what
it's a tricky one, I want to be really sensitive to folks that are retired because they're no longer working, they're on a fixed income, so I get that, and I truly don't want to be disrespectful of that at all. But we also have a lot of people that work in this town, work for the town, that are in lower wage jobs that don't make a lot of money, and they're also on a fixed income. They have whatever income they're generating from their jobs, and we went through union negotiations, and we certainly didn't give anybody 5%, and we didn't really give anybody 3%, as far as I can recall. It was really 2 to 2.5%. So it's not really fair to compare them because retirees are different from active employees. But I just want to give you all the information as you're making the decision.
Yeah, Doug, do the retirees currently make like 80% of what their salary was?
That would only, 80% would only be for somebody that's fully maxed out. If they retire earlier, they would get a much lower percentage, and that's why the average pension, I think, was around the $27,000 range. So that's obviously, much less than 80% of someone's highest salary.
Yeah, okay.
Any other thoughts, comments?
Just one point if I could.
Okay.
It's a tough one.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
Regarding the correlation between active employees and retirees, I don't think that your average employee makes $16,000 a year.
No.
And at 2% at that is like, 0.5% at an average, or maybe 1% at an average salary nowadays.
Okay, anybody else on the board, any other thoughts?
Actually, just one question as an aside. So there's 23 towns, and right now you have 4 passed, so there's approximately 10 other towns would have to approve it.
5 passed.
5 passed now.
Yeah.
So, and they all have the same time frame required as well, so that it's kind of like an ongoing right now?
Yes.
Okay.
There's 4 or 5 other meetings tonight.
Tonight, right.
4 or 5 other tomorrow.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
No, thank you.
And just one other point on the votes, is our vote is equal as anyone else's vote, or is it weighted on how much we contribute into the?
Is equal as anyone.
Is equal as anyone.
I think that's why they limited it to the municipalities and towns.
Okay.
Okay, what's the will of the board? Is there a motion somewhere here? So, from my standpoint, generally, as a rule, I am never a fan of approving any kind of an increase without any kind of a funding source in place. And I've gone back and forth on this since this came to me. And then on the other hand, I think we all understand what the cost of living is now and what the inflation has done, and specifically what it's done to our senior residents, and the same way we advocate for rent control for the people that live in these parks. I think in this case, although it will be difficult, to Doug's point, it's going up $1 million as is, so the extra $135,000 that we know is going to be 100% taken care of, or giving some relief to the seniors in our community that worked for us for all those years. That's why I've been going back and forth, trying to figure out what the right answer is with that. And I think, when there is no clear-cut right or wrong answer, I think you make the decision that helps people. And I think in this case, having that additional funding, although it will be difficult for us, and I think that's what our job is as an elected board, is to find those resources and find that funding. We know what's ahead of us. It's not hitting us right away in this next fiscal year. And it'll definitely be a challenge. But, I think we've seen it. The legislature voted for it. The county commissioners have voted for it. The Plymouth County Retirement System voted for it. And it looks as though it's got some pretty good momentum going from the rest of the cities and towns. So for me, like I said, if it's able to help, some of our more, more affected residents and the residents that are most in need, then I would say I'd probably be in favor of doing this, even though it does add a significant burden to the administrator's office and the accountant's office to find this funding. But it just feels, from a humane standpoint, I don't want to be really the one to tell senior citizens that we could have offered them assistance and we didn't do it. So that's just my thought. Anybody else? Anybody? No?
I agree that this is a hard decision only in that we're kind of going into unprecedented times where resources are very hard. And the strain that's felt across the board is hard. With that said, those of us whom are being hit the hardest are our retirees who have earned our respect and our support. So with that said, I would join Mike with my, I'm gonna call it a guarded support, only because, like I said, these times are tough, but I do join you with my support. And thank you for all you're doing for our retirees.
Anybody else?
Was that a motion, Tiffany? Or you just-
I will make a motion, pardon me, to move ahead with my.
To approve it?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll second that.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor? Lori? Yeah, okay.
Aye.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you heard me or not. All right. Might be a drag. Okay, so unanimous, guys.
Thank you very much,
So-
members of the board. Appreciate
All
it.
right. All right, and I did have a conversation with Treasurer O'Brien earlier about improving the process in which the communication comes down to the members of the Board of Selectmen in particular. I know a lot of communication goes through the Treasurer's office within the county, and some of it goes through the Plymouth County Advisory Board, but there's 4 other members on every other Board of Selectmen for the most part, outside of the towns that have 3 members on their board. And it's something that if we knew this was coming, this would have been something that we could have prepared for. We could have looked at funding or planning our funding for during negotiations or during our planning for town meeting. So like I said, I definitely support the seniors, and I feel comfortable with the decision that this board made. But it will be difficult for us, as far as us and I'm sure other communities, because I sat back and I said to Treasurer O'Brien, you guys just gave us all this money for the CARES Act because we didn't have any money. And then you gave us ARPA money because we didn't have any money to fund these things. And now you say, hey, here's $137,000 a year for the next 5 years. No funding source. So, right? I'm like, missing something, but it's a good cause. And the cause outweighs the detriment to the town. So, we'll figure it out. We have no other choice. So, thank you guys.
We do know how difficult it is, believe me, in all the boards, but we do appreciate it as well. And the retirees really do. We've gotten calls from them, over this past month. And they're very happy with the boards that have voted for them.
And we do 1,000,000% appreciate the people that came before us and the hard work that they've done, especially across the board. And I think from an equity standpoint, one of the things that was just mentioned was that it was already allowed for school employees, and it's not fair at that point to leave out our police, our fire, our highway, our parks, and other municipal employees that equally deserve to have that increase. So.
And we'll do better with communication, Mr.
Appreciate
Chairman.
it.
Yeah, we'll
Appreciate it.
Send out the newsletter to all the.
That's what I told them. I said
Yeah.
to the town,
Good idea.
Get me a newsletter.
I
So.
appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Doug. We appreciate that.
You got it, thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, other new business not reasonably anticipated. Doug?
I do have one item, Mike. As the board knows, and as has been written about publicly in a local newspaper, I'm sad to report that we'll be losing our assistant town administrator. Jen will be moving on to be a town manager in another community. But tonight, the reason why I want to bring this up under other business not reasonably anticipated is that vote from that other community didn't happen until after our last meeting, and I don't want to lose precious time. It's not, the assistant town administrator position is not, we added it to the town charter in the last go-around of charter amendments, mainly to cover the situation where if the town administrator is not available, so it's clear, who is in second command and who has all the power and authority. We didn't go so far into the charter to delve into all those other personnel issues, which the charter committee is looking at now, dealing with personnel-related issues, meaning especially hiring, all that type of thing. So it's not explicitly stated in the charter. what I would ask, and what I am asking tonight, again, so we don't lose, several weeks until our next meeting to discuss it again, would be to see if the board is comfortable delegating either some or all of that hiring process to me, to the town administrator's position, to fill that position. My thought is, I'm the one, and whoever's in my seat, not just me personally, the town administrator is the one that works the most closely with the assistant town administrator. So I really would like to have some strong input into the process as well as the selection of the person. If you felt comfortable delegating that to me, I'm going to work very closely with the HR director, and we're going to, follow all the best practices. We're going to advertise heavily through the MMA and the Beacon. There will be a very public and fair process. We'll have some very clear information about the position, the qualifications, the duties. We'll obviously screen resumes. We may also pull in a few other folks to give us some additional perspectives on that review team. I wouldn't ask for it to be a formal screening committee. My preference is that it would be delegated to my position so I can work with the HR department and have a professional process. We vet who we determine to be the finalists based on our understanding of the job and the position, narrow it down. Ideally for me, I would love to be able, if I had a clear-cut candidate who was the clear-cut best choice finalist in my mind, I'd like to present that person to you for an up or down vote. That to me would be reasonable. There are certainly other ways to do it if you and we can have a discussion about it, but that's really the main point of me raising this under other new business, is because it was just hot off the press. I'd like to be able to get started on a process.
Okay, so first off, Jen, congratulations. Like I said in the start when you said you were interviewing for it, we hate to lose you, but it's a tremendous opportunity for you and very well deserved. And you've done your time. And when we drafted the position of the assistant town administrator, it was never meant to be somebody as the assistant town administrator forever. It was always supposed to be the role of the town administrator to work with that assistant and prepare them to move on to better things. And you lucked out. You got it right in your hometown. Your commute's going to be pretty good. So with that, beyond that, Doug, I don't have, and anybody else can have any other thought. I'm just kind of thinking back to how we did it in the past a little bit. I would feel very comfortable, I think, with you and HR vetting the process and vetting the candidates. But I think what we should probably have you guys do is bring it down to 3, and then prior to our meeting, I would ask that each one of the members of the Board of Selectmen meet with you privately, have a conversation with you to get an understanding of what your needs are, what you're looking for from your office, and if there's a person that you think your preference would be, then you have that conversation privately with a member of the board, and then either we vote in favor of the person that you put forward, kind of privately as just your preference. I think we've done this before with. There was another position, I forget what it was, where you kind of just, said based on, what you had interviewed, there's a clear-cut person, and we kind of reviewed it briefly, and then it was up to us to go through the interview process and say, this person, you're right, either we agree with you as a whole or we disagree, and but I think it'd be important to know what your preference is going into it, just so that we can be aware and see if we see the same thing out of that person.
So if I can jump in on that, and I should have mentioned this earlier, I believe when you guys hired Jen in her position, it was several months, 6 months or so before you hired me, so I wasn't here then. But in looking through the notes, I'm not sure if you did it that way. I feel like there may have been a different process where. So I just want to want to pull that up.
I think we did it from a different perspective. I think we did. I want to say a member of the Board of Selectmen, who is currently a town administrator in another town, was part of the interview process and was going through the applicants, and he participated along with possibly Marcy. I think Marcy was the town administrator at the time. So he assisted Marcy, and I think Stacy Callahan from HR was part of that process as well.
Right.
And I think at the time, it was kind of presented to us that, that the committee had kind of come to the determination that there was a person that they felt was the most qualified. But I want to say we still went through the process. We interviewed you. I think we just had conversations with you separately.
No.
Yeah,
We just went on that recommendation.
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
meet just, or interview with a smaller group,
Smaller
not
group.
the whole board. And take it for what it's worth,
Mm.
but I do think giving deference to the town administrator is very important,
Mm.
because they do work very closely, and so I think you want to avoid the risk of, because it's, the board right now, but you never know what the dynamics are, or what the makeup of a board is. And that individual really needs to be able to complement the administrator and work well together. Doug and I work very well together. The workload is heavy, and you want to make sure that, again, the individuals complement each other both in skills and just as in a working relationship.
Well, I mean, I think if we maybe we should be looking at this differently. Chief Ziola, you're in the room. You're responsible for choosing your deputy. All right, at whatever time that the next deputy, you'd be the person responsible. You're not asking our opinion. I mean, you might have some conversation on the side, but ultimately it's your decision. I think the same is true with Chief Duffy. I know, Jen, we hired you ahead of hiring the town administrator, and that was for specific reasons based on the specific instances that were going on at the time, and we didn't know who necessarily was going to come forward out of the pool of applicants for the town administrator. So I think we kind of wanted to pick somebody that we felt reflected, the values of the town at the time before we realized who came through, and that we'd have somebody like Doug at that point. Fortunately for us, you guys have worked great together. But yeah, I mean, I'm open to whatever the board thinks. I do agree, and we do it with every other board and committee in town. We say, we're not going to appoint somebody to your board that you're not comfortable working with. So, I mean, there's a couple ways. What's the rest of the committee thoughts?
Can I make one other point? I don't want to cut anybody off if you have a thought that you really want to make right now. I mean, part of the way I've been thinking this through is, if I had, say, one candidate that I feel like that's the rock star, that's the person that I really think is the best, but you really wanted three, I'd have to figure out the other two to bring in, and that's not really fair to those other people, and ultimately maybe you might think one of those other people, and that just could result in a sort of a bad outcome. If I felt like I had, three people that were all equally qualified, and I just can't pick between the two because they all seem great, I'd have no problem having all three come to you. But my fear is more, again, if I have one that really stands out, but we have sort of an arbitrary number, you have to have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or however many, it's not really fair to them, and it could just become a difficult process. So I'm just letting you know kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I oftentimes, one person usually does stand out with pretty much any position that we seek to fill. So anyways, that was just part of how I've been thinking about it.
Any other thoughts?
I do. I think, well, first of all, we do have time is of the essence. From what you're saying, your thought process in terms of how you think this process would work best for you, in terms of who you will be working side by side with, is what I respect right now, and is what I would what I support moving forward with, in the idea that I believe it would be the most streamlined approach, where we're still being able to supply, provide our guidance and support, but ultimately I feel like that would be something that it's very imperative that you work very well and very closely with that. So I would say the town administrator, I would support the town administrator leading this with the HR director, and moving forward, as you had mentioned. But I also do, and I think if we said 3, and like you said, and you don't have 3 strong candidates, but you have 1, I would hate to have you dilute the process. But if you did all of a sudden have, a few candidates that, had varying attributes, then our guidance would be even that much more helpful. So I defer to your thoughts on that.
Anybody else?
Yes, I absolutely defer to Doug, and it's my opinion that all heads of departments ought to hire their own people. So I absolutely support, Doug and Stacy making the ultimate decision, and whomever works for them, because they know their craft better than we do.
Yep.
So that's all.
John?
Well, I think based on the last couple of meetings, you know that I like to have choices, even if it is the town administrator's opinion. His opinion will certainly be taken into account. So I would rather, maybe what you suggested, have more than one choice, but hear from Doug privately on which one he thinks is the better one, and then we each can put the amount of appropriate weight on that recommendation. But I still would like to hear from more than one choice anytime we're filling an important role like this. So.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I mean, Doug, that is a good point that you brought up, that if you don't have, multiple qualified candidates, if there's holes in people's resumes that, they just don't fit the need. Because I remember when we cast the net initially for the assistant town administrator, we had people that were applying from all sorts of walks of life that just had, I think we had a restaurant manager that was trying to be the assistant town administrator. It's great. It's not to say that they couldn't do the job per se, but they had no municipal experience, and the amount of a learning curve that would go into that is concerning. But I don't know. I mean, I think initially we look at it from a standpoint of, obviously we know we have to advertise the position. We have to get that process going, and I think I'm definitely very comfortable with you guys vetting the applicants, and for the most part, yeah. I mean, I guess it just comes down to the will of the board. I think it's.
Can I make one other point,
Yep.
Mike? And I don't want to cut you off,
Yep.
though. I think it's important also to recognize that doing interviews on television in front of the board is a fundamentally different process than private interviews. And so, again, sort of my concern is, you have, I'm making this up, say I only had 2 people that I thought were really going to be good, but you want 3 because you want choices. But I don't really have a good third one, so I'm going to have to pick someone and subject them to a public interview on television. They're going to have to let their employer know all this stuff when they're probably not really in the running. And I just don't think that's really fair to that person. So that's why I'm just looking for flexibility. Who knows? Maybe I'll have 5, but oftentimes in my experience, generally one person kind of rises to the top, generally, maybe sometimes 2. So that's sort of my fear. It'd be one thing if we talked about wanting options in a private setting, but when they're publicly televised, it's just a different dynamic. And again, we didn't do that type of interview with the assistant the last time. I'll stop now. Whatever you want to do is fine.
Do they need to be public interviews? Because I asked, as my 2 places I interviewed when I left here, neither were public. So that I just didn't know if that
Well,
was.
if we meet as a board, then it has to be public.
Okay.
So if it's Doug and Stacy doing the interview, that's a private interview. But if we have a quorum, then it has to be a public interview.
I think
And
what you
to-
may have had was a screening committee. So screening committees can meet in executive session.
Okay.
And maybe you're the town
one-
manager or someone has the appointing authority. This must be a different process. Screening committees can do executive session. If they had a screening committee, maybe it wasn't a screening committee. Maybe they delegated and they were just kind of what I was asking for, which are something
Maybe,
similar to
yeah.
what you went through.
Yeah. Well, one was a town manager situation where I think he had the authority to make the decision, where I don't know if you technically have the ability to make that decision. So maybe that was one of the differences.
Correct.
One of them maybe was technically public, but it wasn't televised, and no one other than the candidates went in. So it was the weirdest public meeting.
Yeah.
It was posted. No one else could go in. We went in one at a time, and then the board made their decision. So, anyways, if you're trying to avoid that, I guess I just don't want. I mean, if you only have one really strong candidate, great, then that's what it is. But if there's 2 that you're,
Yeah.
If it's like 60-40, I'd like them to come in and interview. I'm not saying you have to have 3 or 5 just to fill up a roster, come up with an arbitrary number, but I would feel more comfortable. Because I think say if we did have 3 up there and we have 2 good, strong candidates and one, restaurant manager who knows nothing about municipal government, it's going to be pretty obvious to us that it's between the 2 with the municipal experience. But I also get what you're saying. We don't want to subject that person needlessly to an interview.
Yeah.
But I guess my hope is that we have, 3 awesome choices to go through, and that we actually, have someone to pick from. But maybe I'm really dreaming at this point.
You're not dreaming, but you're right. I've seen it happen where you think, all right, we're automatically going to have three great people, and then all of a sudden, you have people stop backing out. I mean, somebody backed out of one of the interviews that we were going to have because they felt like they didn't want to. They felt like they didn't have as good a chance. Like they felt after the fact that they weren't even really qualified, and it wasn't worth them telling their other job that they were going to be interviewing. So then all of a sudden you're down to 2 people, or you're down to 1 person, and then, I think we have to fill the position. So I think what I'm hearing you say, John, is if he's got a rock star in the group, then, he brings it to us and we meet this person and we make the decision. But we can also turn and say, Doug, I don't know what you're seeing in this person, and maybe we turn the next and say back to the drawing board, cast the net again. But I think in most cases, we'd probably agree with the fact, Doug generally has a pretty good, grasp on people and stuff like that. And I think you wouldn't put somebody forward that, 5 of us would be adamantly against, So, so I would defer to you on it, obviously. But if you find yourself in a position, I think if you find yourself in a position that you have multiple candidates and you'd like to get the board's input, I think then that's important,
I think Jen had a point.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nate. If I could just add one thing. I'm going to make a point that maybe Doug wouldn't make, but I think it does boil down to the decision. And your board appoints the administrator, that you have faith in that person and their abilities. And the person at this level, whether it's either chief or the town administrator, I think that the ultimate question is who should make that decision. And not to take any of the authority away from the chief elected body, but I think that the administrator, whether it's Doug or somebody going forward, that decision should lie with that person in terms of who they think they will not only work best with, but are able to share the workload with, trust, get along with going forward.
Agreed.
Yeah, agree.
Is this something maybe we put and ask the charter committee to take a look at, and maybe adding that as one of the town administrator's powers is that he or she gets to select his or her assistant?
Yeah, I'm going to actually talk about that in my town administrator correspondence, so you read my mind.
Because I think that makes sense. I feel better, Chief, is that like mass law that you get to pick your deputy, or how does that work? Or is that a town?
It's because he's a strong chief.
Yeah, a strong chief.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's law.
There's
law that
so there's a law. If we had something similar, saying that the town administrator, it's his or her responsibility to make that decision, I would feel a lot more comfortable with that. But we kind of have that void right now where it doesn't say, but it also doesn't give us the power explicitly to do it either. If I'm remembering the charter right, so maybe we can have that could be something they can add some language to for the next time we go to hire a assistant town administrator.
Right. Yeah. And again, I appreciate what Jen said. I agree with her 100%. But I also, given the lack of clarity in our charter, and I understand you guys would like to have, you'd prefer choices if there's choices that are available. It sounds like you kind of trust me if I have one, if I have one choice. So I'm comfortable, and I think you guys are comfortable with a process where you're delegating to me, so I'm able to do that in a professional process with the HR director. If there's literally only one great candidate, I'll bring forward that one person. If I have several, I'll bring several. I'll have in the back of my head that, if there are good choices, you'd like to have choices. But again, I really feel strongly I don't want to bring someone forward to meet an arbitrary number that doesn't have a shot, because I don't think it's fair to them. So I'm hoping that's kind of like a happy medium, but again, I'll defer to you guys, whatever you want to do.
Well,
I make a motion to defer to Doug for this?
Well, I think we're just comfortable. We're comfortable with that process. You know, they start the process, they start the vetting process, and then see where it ends up. If Doug finds that it's one rock star, I mean, we're going to check in come July 11th, and maybe we can tweak it from there after he's got some applicants in. Yeah. So I'd say just start the process for now, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Yep.
All right.
Yep. That works.
Okay. Next on the agenda, old business.
I have none.
Okay. Town administrators report and correspondence.
So a few things tonight. We finally received a successful bid for our King Philip restoration project. And for those that don't know, the King Philip is a piece of antique fire apparatus that in my nearly 20 years of local government work, I've never had to issue an invitations for bid for a single project 4 times. But I had to do this one 4 times because it's just such a specialized thing, restoring antique fire apparatus. So special thanks to the chief and for Charlie Williams at the fire department. We've finally able to secure an excellent vendor located out of Pennsylvania, I believe. So we're in the process of executing those contracts. That's a $75,000 project, and that was previously funded from the Community Preservation Act at town meeting. I sent out an email note to all of you. Moving on to another topic, I sent out an email note that I thought was fun just for you to see. Jen and I did a team building exercise at our last department head meeting, and it was a lot of fun. I think folks got something good out of it. And I'm just very appreciative of all the department heads that we have working with us. We have a great team. Next, I want to let you know we applied for a $15,000 grant that will help defray some of the cost of the 2 electric vehicles that were funded at town meeting for the town inspectional departments. So I'm just waiting to get the word on that grant before I actually order the vehicles. There's $7,500 each is the grant application, so hopefully that will come through. Next, I want to let you know that we are working on the turnover section of the financial policies. That was the one section that we pulled after discussing it at our prior meeting based on John's concerns. So I've been in the working with the financial team and speaking with the DOR, speaking to our auditors, regrouping our own perspectives. I will likely have something ready for your next meeting on July 11th. Unfortunately, the accountant and the treasurer are not available that night, so I'll talk to Mike about whether I just present it on my own without them or we wait until the August meeting, but we'll be able to sort that out. Getting to John's point a moment ago, I will be attending the next Charter Review Committee meeting next week, and I'm going to give them, these are my individual personal recommendations about things they should look at for the charter based on my position. So I'm going to hand this out to you. It's just a draft, but this is where I'm at right now. And I'm sorry, Laura, you don't have it, but it's okay because my intent is really not to get into any of the details on this tonight, because again, these are just my personal opinions, but you'll see there's a common theme here, which much of my concern with the charter revolves around personnel management. That's where there's so much either gray area or really lack of authority in an administrator, and it's so decentralized that it's very difficult for anybody in my position to be sort of responsible for performance and an operation when I don't actually have the authority over who's in positions or dealing with all the issues around personnel. So you can read this for yourself. I'd encourage you. Lori, I will email this to you. If any of you have any thoughts or comments, I'm happy to talk about it before the next Charter Review Committee meeting. 2 other quick items. Jen will be at the next planning board meeting coming up next week, talking about the MBTA community zoning that I spoke about earlier. It's more of an informal meeting for Jen to bring the planning board up to speed on her efforts, because ultimately this will turn into a public hearing with the planning board, and it's their decision on what they want to endorse for what goes on the town meeting warrant. And I thank her for her efforts on that. And then lastly, I participated in a fire station building committee meeting last week, looking at the chief as the chair is really looking at trying to figure out where we go from here, given the town meeting and the ballot failure. And there's a lot of different ideas that were floated at the meeting, a lot of different thoughts, but we redirected, and we're going to come up with a whole list of options at pretty much every potential option there is, then look at what we recommend, then we'll bring that to the board for you to look at and make a decision and give us some direction on what's the best way to move forward. Because again, while we understand why that was rejected by voters, the need is still there. The need didn't go away, so we're going to have to figure out how we manage going forward. So we'll come up with options at a future meeting. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Selectmen's comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Board of Selectmen and are the opinions and comments of only the individual member. Select Person Elwood?
Well, I guess I'll start by congratulating you, Jen. I know you've done a wonderful job in your role here. You will definitely be missed, and I know you'll do a bang-up job in your new role. I'd like to also publicly thank all the people who put together Rockland Day, postponed a day. It was still a great event, kind of pared down a little bit, but it still went off very well, and I know that's a lot of people put in a lot of work to make sure that it happened at all. So John and his whole crew there, congratulations on making that happen. And then I can't end a meeting without begging people to please join the rent control board. I know people I talk to out there who are concerned about the rent control. We can't do anything if we don't have a board. That's step one. We need someone to step up and get on that board or committee. I'm not sure technically what it is, but without that, we can't do anything. So I am hoping that, I did tell you work on this, but I need someone to step up and join that committee. So that's it.
Thank you, John. Select Person Childs?
Yeah, I too thought Rockland Day was pretty fantastic, and despite the change of days, like pushing it forward a day, it turned out great, and it was a huge turnout. And again, Jen and again Julie, both of you, good luck in your future endeavors. I'm totally not surprised that you got chosen as a town manager, Jen. You have been a dream to work with. So I do wish you luck. And finally, I am so excited and pleased to announce that say the date of August 26th, because we are having a fundraiser for the WRPS Scholarship Fund, and my husband's latest documentary on the band The Dogmatics is going to be playing at the high school, and the band's going to be playing after. So it ought to be fun. I'm just kind of putting a save the date out there at this point, but you'll be seeing a lot of posters and online presence about that event. So that's it.
Thank you, Lori. Select Person Needham?
Well, I'd like to join everybody in saying congratulations, Jennifer. It's we will certainly miss you, but I'm very excited about your next step, and am very thankful that I've been able to work with you and know you and learn from you. So congratulations, and I'd like to congratulate Julia Sheffer once again. Rockland Day, see, I'm basically just chiming in with everybody, but I agree, it was awesome, and thank you, ton of hard work to have to reschedule, but at the same time, it was done, and we just have such an amazing community. It was really great to be out there and celebrate with everybody, and last week was the last day of school, and I want to wish everybody a safe and healthy school vacation.
Thank you, Tiffany. Just piggyback on what you were saying about Rockland Day, I just want to thank John Lucas and the Rockland Day Committee. It's funny, I was talking to a select person in another community earlier today, and when I mentioned that we were able to, as a community, adjust and shift on the fly with the support of police and fire, who had already been scheduled to do details on a Saturday, and that there was no hesitation from those departments to switch their details to Father's Day of all days, and do that to support the community. The other select person that I talked to, they replied that that would not happen in their community. So it's one of the things I actually said to Chief Zioli at the stadium at Rockland Days. How is that? Why is that the case? You know, why weren't these things happening for all these years in this town? And what was the hesitation of departments? And I'm not saying in the last 10 years, last 15 years, 20 years, but you hear the history of the town of all the infighting and how departments would just, for whatever reason, they just, we're not going to do that because we're not going to do that. I mean, you remember the finance committee, how department heads were afraid to go to the finance committee because how they were treated for years. And it's just, you know, I think you look at an event like Rockland Day and all the boards and committees that came together to make that happen in the departments, and you just look and think about how far we've come as a town and how great it is to see that we have a community that works together for the betterment of the community. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion and a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, roll call. Selectman Childs?
Yep.
Selectman Elwood?
Yes.
Selectperson Needham?
Yes.
And myself. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.